Good day, everyone, and welcome to your virus report. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give you guys the numbers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit. Okay, so let's get the chart started right here and take a look at what's going on. The numbers today is 75,778, okay, in China. 634 others, most of them were cruise ship victims. 104 in South Korea, 94 in Japan, 84 in Singapore, 67 in Hong Kong, 35 in Thailand, 24 in Taiwan, 22 in Malaysia, 16 in Germany, 16 in Vietnam. Now, those are the top countries that have this. Now, here's the thing. The Chinese, over the past week or two, have imposed these quarantines in the city of Wuhan. And these aren't ordinary quarantines. They are actually forcing everyone to stay inside. And by doing so, they have cut the train of transmission to the disease by turning everybody into basically hermits. You know, I mean, they're enforcing that. Everybody's staying inside, so they're not out and about transmitting the disease to one another, you know. So we've seen a decrease in the new confirmed cases out of mainland China over the past few days. So it is effective. Well, of course it would be. If somebody's quarantined inside their house and they can't step outside the door, how are they going to transmit it to others? If they have the disease, then they're not transmitting it to others. And if other people, it does break the chain of transmission. But the thing about this is, it also completely stops economic activity. It stops people from working. It stops people from associating together. Humans by nature are social animals. And so the big question mark is, how long can they continue this? I mean, if you were told, hey, you know, you've got to live inside a box, here's your box, get inside, you know, the last person out, give a box for 5 people, you know, and make them all crawl inside and say the last person that leaves their box gets $1 million. Well, you know, I'm going to tell you, they'd stay in their box as long as they can, but eventually they'd end up coming out. I mean, sooner or later, you know. It's just human nature. These people are all like they're boxed up. It's like they've got, by now, they're probably having what's a really bad case of what's called cabin fever, you know. And, of course, China has to go back to work at a certain point in time. They've delayed for a while, but probably next week, things are going to have to try to get back to some resemblance of normal. Also, they start to run out of food inside their homes, you know. And so what we're going to see is the Chinese have succeeded in slowing this thing down. But the way I see it, as soon as things start to get back to a resemblance of normal, the disease is going to start its locomotion again. Now, in other places, they haven't imposed these extreme quarantine measures that China imposed, and I'm not really sure if they can, to tell you the truth. There's big question marks as to whether it would be even constitutional to try to tell everyone that they have to stay home and stay inside their homes, you know. And especially in democratic Western countries, would that even work? Would that work? And what we see in China is the Chinese have been very good about obeying the law, you know, imposed upon them that they have to stay indoors, you know. And even still, we see an increase in numbers. Albeit slow, it slowed it down tremendously, but that's the key word we're going to use here is it has slowed it down. It hasn't stopped the progress of the disease. Now, in other countries like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on, we're seeing the same thing starting to happen in the early stages that happened in Wuhan. If you went back several months ago, when only a handful of people in Wuhan had it. It seems like in order to break the line of transmission of this disease, you have to take drastic measures that would, in effect, stop the global economy as well. And I think this disease could be squashed and stopped and broken the line of transmission. And the Chinese have come pretty close, but it would require even harder, more sterner measures than the Chinese are doing. And their measures are pretty rough. And so in order to really stop this disease, you would basically have to isolate and take each person and separate them and not allow them to come together whatsoever. Like, you're over here, now you got to maintain a 200-yard distance from the next person, and don't anybody get close to anybody else. I mean, how can you survive that way? You'd have to do that with every person that's everywhere. I mean, how far would you have to go in order to really stop this? And I believe it could be stopped, but it would require absolutely phenomenal effort. And there's two reasons why that I'm going to go into right now. One is asymptomatic transmission, which basically means that a person can actually have the virus and have no symptoms. And there's a big question mark to how contagious people are they when they are asymptomatic. There's a question mark there. We don't know at this point. Then the second big thing about this is airborne transmission. And what's happened on the cruise ships points toward airborne transmission. In other words, they locked them all in their cabins. I'm not saying it did, but is there a possibility that the disease is moving through the air ventilation system? I'm just putting it out there as a possibility. I don't know if that's actually been confirmed yet or not. But there's been reports of some of the passengers saying that they saw the crew or whatever putting plastic, I guess, over the ventilation system. I don't know at this point if there's airborne transmission to that degree or what degree the airborne transmission is, but there's been reports from China that there is airborne transmission. Except they're saying that it has to be more in like an enclosed room, but still, I mean, I think they're trying to process this information and figure it out themselves, even the experts, on whether or not this thing is airborne transmitted. Myself, I'm starting to think, hey, yeah, this thing is probably airborne transmitted, but it's probably not going to be airborne transmitted on the outside wind, more or less, where there's a breeze and you're outside and the wind's blowing it around. I don't think that's really the method. I think it's more like if you're in an enclosed space, then if you've got people that's got this and they're sneezing, there's viruses on the particles that can travel probably for a long distance. Probably. Now, see, we're venturing into territory right now about airborne transmission where there's not that much information as of yet, but the suspicion is there that this very well could be airborne transmitted. But it's bad enough having it so that there's asymptomatic transmission. And that's bad enough. And this is, I don't think anybody's going to argue the point with me when I say that this disease is extremely contagious. Just take a look at what happened on board these cruise ships. And once this disease actually gets a hold in the communities, it starts to spread in towns and cities, it's almost impossible to track every case. Excuse me. It's almost impossible to track every case and find each individual that could be a asymptomatic carrier of the disease. At that point, once it starts to get a root or a toehold, this disease, it's pretty much going to do a Wuhan. It'll be the next Wuhan, right? And it looks to me like this disease is getting a toehold in places like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, and Taiwan, and so on. Vietnam, and so on. Looks like it's getting a toehold in these countries. Now, when the rest of the world sees what it does to these countries, if they can slow down the progression of this disease enough so that the rest of the world can see what it does to these countries where it has got a toehold, then perhaps protocols will be enacted. I think it would take nothing less than closing down all traffic. In other words, if they really want to stop this thing, the best way is to basically close your border to all traffic, in and out. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out, sort of a thing. And, I mean, that's a drastic measure, right? But in consideration of what it's going to do to these countries like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and what I say is what it's going to do, because I believe it's already getting toehold there in those countries. Once they see what it's going to do and what it's already done to China, then drastic action could possibly, I don't know, we'll have to wait and see what they're going to do. But I would say if you really don't want it in your country, you got to do what Russia's starting to do. Russia said, okay, no more Chinese coming through our border, but they've already got some of it in Russia, and we don't know how far that's going to spread what's already there, and so we're dealing with a I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. The governments of Earth right now got a tiger by the tail with this thing. This thing is not an ordinary bug of any sort, like an ordinary flu or anything like that. It's not like the flu. It's 20 times more deadly than the flu. And, of course, that could rise because there's an awful lot of people that, like a large percentage of the people that catch it actually need hospitalization. And if it overwhelms a hospital system or in a country, then the people aren't going to receive proper care then. And so the death toll will rise. It's already 20 times what the flu is. It could go up much higher again, I mean, if the people aren't getting sufficient care, the people that have the pneumonia, And so this is a very dangerous disease, nothing like we've ever faced before in the world, and it's going to create situations like we've never seen before in the world as it advances. And stopping it, I believe it can be stopped, but it would take because it's so transmissible, because it's so contagious, absolutely contagious, that it's very, very difficult to stop it. But I believe it can be stopped. I truly believe it can be stopped, but it would take a monumental effort, and it would take cooperation between all the people involved to stop it, And, of course, citizens of any country, I don't care what country you're in, if you tell them to completely isolate themselves, I mean, people are social animals. They will sneak out to associate with other people, especially teenagers. Listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.